The Carpathian Mountains in October possess a particular melancholy that seeps into a man's bones. Our gamekeeper knew this intimately, had known it for 20 years of service on Count von Steinberg's estate, where the morning mist rolled through the valleys like the breath of sleeping giants. He rose, as always, before dawn, not from duty alone, but from that peculiar restlessness that afflicts men who've made peace with solitude, but never quite friendship with it. The lodge stood isolated, a solid construction of pine logs and stone, practical rather than picturesque. Through its small windows, the first gray light revealed frost patterns on the glass, delicate as the lace his Martha used to make. 5 years now since the fever took her, and still he sometimes set 2 cups for morning tea. Habit, he'd mutter to himself, though we might observe it was something more tender than mere routine. His morning inspection began with the rifle, a Wurndl Hollab, the 1867 model, maintained with the devotion of a man who understood that in these mountains, precision meant survival. The metal gleamed dully in the lamplight as he checked the action, counted cartridges. 32 rounds in the leather pouch, always 32, though he rarely needed more than one. The wolves were growing bolder this year, driven down from the higher peaks by an early cold snap that promised a harsh winter. Outside, his breath clouded in the sharp air as he made his rounds. 3,000 hectares of forest to oversee, beech, oak, and pine ascending the mountainsides in ancient succession. The Count's domain stretched from the village of Dolina in the valley to the ridge that marked the Galician border, a kingdom of wood and shadow that the gamekeeper knew better than any map could describe. Each tree had its story, each game trail its purpose, each clearing its history of blood or birthing. Young Pavel waited by the equipment shed, stamping his feet against the cold, his 19 years making him eager but not yet wise. "Good morning, sir," the boy offered, his Ruthenian accent thick as porridge. The gamekeeper nodded, noting how the apprentice had already prepared the tracking gear, progress small but measurable. "The northwest section today," he instructed, his voice carrying that particular economy of men who spend much of their time alone. "The Count wants a report on the deer population before the timber marking begins." They moved through the forest with practiced quiet, the gamekeeper reading signs invisible to untrained eyes, a broken twig here, a scrape on bark there, droppings still warm with steam. The forest spoke to those who knew its language, and he was fluent in every dialect. A roebuck had passed this way at dawn, favoring its left foreleg. A pine marten had cached a kill in the hollow oak. The wild boar sounder had grown to 12, maybe 13 members. It was near the old logging road that he found the first anomaly. Tool marks on a beech tree, fresh but attempting to appear weathered. His fingers traced the gouges while Pavel watched nervously. Someone had been here recently, someone who didn't belong. The gamekeeper filed this observation away, his mind already cataloging possibilities. Timber thieves, perhaps, though the location seemed wrong. Poachers, more likely, though the season and placement puzzled him. The sun climbed higher, burning away the mist to reveal the estate in its autumn glory. Golden leaves carpeted the forest floor, creating a rustling symphony with each footstep. In the distance, the sound of axes rang out. The woodcutters were at work in the southern section, preparing timber for the Empire's endless appetite for railway sleepers. Count von Steinberg had contracts to fulfill, quotas that grew larger each year as the Habsburg realm stretched its iron tentacles further into the wilderness. At midday, they paused at a clearing where an old shrine stood, its wooden Christ weathered but enduring. Pavel crossed himself, mumbling a prayer. The gamekeeper remained still, respectful but uncommitted. He'd seen enough of death in these woods to know that God, if he watched at all, did so from a considerable distance. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to the lodge. Anna, the tavern keeper's daughter, carrying a pot of goulash. 28 years old and widowed young, she possessed that particular beauty that comes from sorrow transformed into strength. "Father thought you might appreciate something hot," she said, not quite meeting his eyes. The gamekeeper accepted gratefully, noting how she'd seasoned it exactly as Martha once had. No accident, he suspected. "Stay for tea," he heard himself saying, surprising them both. She hesitated, then nodded, and they sat in comfortable silence while Pavel made himself scarce, suddenly remembering urgent tasks elsewhere. The young were always more perceptive about such matters than their elders gave them credit for. As evening approached, the gamekeeper made his final rounds alone. The forest, transformed at dusk, became something other than its daylight self. Shadows lengthened into suggestions, familiar paths turned mysterious. Near the northern boundary, he paused, an instinct older than thought making him still. Something was different here, wrong in a way he couldn't yet articulate. The birds had gone quiet too early. The air held a tension like the moment before lightning strikes. He would remember this feeling later, when the stories began. 3 days passed before János burst through the lodge door, his weathered face pale beneath its perpetual tan. The head woodcutter, 35 years old and built like the oaks he felled, wasn't a man given to dramatics. Yet here he stood, cap twisted in his hands, speaking words that would have seemed absurd from anyone else. "The men won't work the northern section. They say there's a spirit walking." The gamekeeper set down his breakfast, black bread and cheese, simple fare for a simple morning, and studied his friend's expression. 20 years they'd known each other, and never had he seen János this unsettled. "Tell me," he said simply. "Started 4 nights ago," János began, accepting the offered chair gratefully. "Young Dmitri was checking his trap lines after dark. You know how he is, always pushing for extra coppers. Saw a light moving through the trees, floating like, no man carrying it. Thought nothing of it, maybe someone from the village. But then Petro saw it the next night, and his brother after that. Always between 9 and 11, always in the same area, near the old boundary stones." The gamekeeper poured tea, strong and bitter, while his mind worked through possibilities. Smugglers used lights, certainly, but they avoided patterns. Lovers meeting in secret had no need for such display. "What do the men say it is?" "A soldier's ghost from the 48 uprising. Father Miklos has been telling everyone who'll listen about the Hungarian dead who never received proper burial. Says their souls wander, seeking peace." János's voice carried the peculiar tone of a rational man repeating irrational things he half believed despite himself. An hour later, the gamekeeper stood in Count von Steinberg's study, a room that spoke of old money and newer ambitions. Maps covered one wall, railway lines spreading like veins across the empire's body. The Count, 58 and silver-haired, possessed that particular Habsburg mixture of enlightenment and tradition that made such men both progressive and conservative in the same breath. "Ghost stories in 1883, the Count mused, fingers drumming on his mahogany desk. "My grandfather would have had the priest exorcise it and been done. My father would have ignored it entirely. And here I am, losing productivity to peasant superstitions." He fixed the gamekeeper with sharp blue eyes. "I need those trees marked and cut before the ground freezes. The railway consortium won't accept supernatural interference as an excuse for delayed shipments." The gamekeeper understood the unspoken command perfectly. "Fix this, quietly, efficiently." "I'll look into it, Your Excellency." "I'm sure you will. You're not a man given to fancy, are you? That's why I've kept you on all these years." That and your discretion. The Count's tone suggested memories of other problems solved without fuss or scandal. "Report directly to me, not through the estate manager. Some matters require delicacy." Walking back through the village, the gamekeeper observed how quickly fear had taken root. Women clutched their children closer. Men gathered in tight groups outside the tavern, voices low and urgent. At the church, Father Miklos held court on the steps, his 65 years giving weight to his words. 35 years since the uprising," the priest intoned in his Hungarian-accented German. 35 years, those poor souls have waited for justice. Is it any wonder they grow restless?" The crowd murmured agreement, crossing themselves. The gamekeeper noted interesting arithmetic. The 48 uprising was 35 years past, true, but no battles had been fought in these particular mountains. The nearest engagement had been 50 kilometers east, near Munkach. In the tavern, Anna served beer with practiced efficiency, dodging the reaching hands of drunk foresters with grace born of long experience. She caught his eye, nodded toward the corner table where old Maria sat alone, nursing a small glass of plum brandy. The gamekeeper understood. The village's unofficial historian might know something useful. But before he could approach her, Pavel appeared at his elbow, breathless from running. "Sir, you need to see this. In the forest, where the lights appear, I found something." They walked quickly through the gathering dusk, Pavel leading the way with nervous energy. The boy had been scouting on his own initiative, dangerous, but showing promise. Near a massive beech tree he stopped, pointing at the bark. "Look close, sir. See the marks?" The gamekeeper knelt, examined the trunk carefully. There, almost invisible unless you knew to look, fresh scratches in the bark, too regular to be natural. Something had been attached here, recently and repeatedly. His fingers found a tiny fiber caught in the rough bark. Hemp rope, fairly new. "Good eyes," he told Pavel, who glowed at the praise. "Tell no one what you found. Tomorrow, you'll help me with the equipment inventory." The boy nodded eagerly, understanding that this was more than routine work. As they walked back, the church bells rang 9 o'clock. The gamekeeper paused, watching the northern forest. Pavel tensed beside him, hand moving instinctively toward the knife at his belt. They waited, breath misting in the cold air, but no mysterious light appeared. Not tonight. "Perhaps the ghost has other business," Pavel attempted humor, though his voice shook slightly. The gamekeeper said nothing, but his mind was already constructing possibilities, each more earthly than the last. Ghosts didn't use rope, didn't follow schedules, didn't choose locations with such deliberate care. The morning brought frost and resolve in equal measure. The gamekeeper prepared methodically, not for hunting game, but for hunting truth. His kit included items unusual for a forest expedition: a compass, a measuring tape, paper and pencil, and a small telescope borrowed from the Count's library. Pavel watched these preparations with barely contained excitement, understanding he was witnessing something beyond ordinary woodcraft. "Fear makes men stupid," the gamekeeper told him as they entered the forest. "It makes them see what they expect rather than what is." The boy nodded solemnly, though his hand still drifted to touch the small wooden cross at his neck. They began at the beech tree where Pavel had found the marks, working outward in careful circles. The gamekeeper's trained eye caught what others had missed: more scratches on trees, always at the same height, forming a line through the forest. Someone had been marking a route, or perhaps... He paused, considering. Not marking, mounting. By noon, they'd traced the marks for nearly half a kilometer, a curving path that avoided the main trails but stayed clear of the densest undergrowth. Efficient, deliberate. The gamekeeper made sketches, noting distances, angles, the relationship between marked trees. A pattern was emerging, though its purpose remained obscure. "Sir," Pavel whispered, though they were alone, "look at the ground here." Between two marked trees, the forest floor showed subtle disturbance. Not a trail exactly, but a repeated pressure that had prevented the usual accumulation of leaves. Something had been dragged or pulled here multiple times, but carefully, trying to leave no obvious trace. They were examining these signs when footsteps approached through the undergrowth. Both men tensed, then relaxed as Anna emerged from the trees carrying a basket. She moved through the forest with surprising confidence for a tavern keeper's daughter. "Mushrooms," she explained, showing them her harvest. "The chanterelles are particularly good this year." Her eyes met the gamekeeper's with unspoken meaning. "Father Miklos is holding a special mass tonight for protection against unquiet spirits. The whole village will attend." After she left, Pavel couldn't hide his smile. "She came all this way to tell you about a mass you wouldn't attend anyway." "She came to tell us the forest will be empty tonight," the gamekeeper corrected, though something in his chest had warmed at her visit. "Everyone will be in church, including, most likely, whoever has been creating our ghost." They returned to the lodge to prepare for the night's work. The gamekeeper cleaned his rifle with extra care, loaded it with the special cartridges he saved for wolves. If they encountered men rather than spirits, the weapon would serve as deterrent, if not defense. Pavel sharpened his knife obsessively, until the gamekeeper told him to stop before he wore the blade to nothing. As darkness fell, the church bells began their summons. Through the window, they could see lanterns converging on the village, like fireflies drawn to warmth. The gamekeeper waited another hour, letting full dark settle over the forest, then nodded to Pavel. They moved through the woods with practiced stealth, taking position near the marked trees. The gamekeeper had chosen their spot carefully. Elevation for observation, thick cover for concealment, clear retreat paths if needed. Pavel crouched beside him, breathing controlled despite his obvious nervousness. 9 o'clock came and went, then 1:30. Just as the gamekeeper began to wonder if they'd guessed wrong, Pavel grabbed his arm. There, a faint glow moving through the trees, perhaps 200 meters away. But this was no supernatural manifestation. Even at this distance, the gamekeeper could see the light swaying with unnatural regularity, mechanical rather than random. "Stay here," he breathed to Pavel, then began moving through the forest with the silence that 2 decades of stalking had taught him. The light continued its strange dance, floating between trees at head height, occasionally pausing as if observing, then continuing along what he now recognized as the path of marked trees. Closer now, perhaps 50 meters, and the gamekeeper could make out details that confirmed his suspicions. The light, an old military lantern by its shape, hung from something he couldn't quite see in the darkness. It moved along a predetermined path with clockwork precision, no human figure visible beneath it. A branch cracked under his foot, loud as a gunshot in the quiet forest. The light immediately went out. The gamekeeper froze, listening. No footsteps, no voices, no sound of flight. After a long moment, he risked lighting a match. The brief flare revealed what darkness had hidden. A thin rope stretched between trees at head height, and hanging from it, the extinguished lantern on a pulley system. Ingenious, really. Someone could set the light moving from one end, let it travel the rope's length, creating the illusion of a floating spirit. But whoever operated it had fled at his approach, leaving only the mechanism behind. He was examining the rope when Pavel appeared, unable to wait any longer. The boy's eyes widened as he understood the deception. "But why?" he asked. "Why would someone—" A sound interrupted him, voices approaching from the village direction. The mass had ended early, or some had left before its conclusion. The gamekeeper quickly cut the rope down, bundled it with the lantern. Evidence, but also questions. Who had the skill for such elaborate deception? Who had the motive? And most importantly, what were they trying to hide in this section of forest that required such theatrical measures to keep people away? Old Maria's cottage crouched at the forest edge, like a toadstool that had grown too large. Its thatched roof green with moss, walls blackened by decades of smoke. The gamekeeper approached at mid-morning, when the old woman would be most lucid. Before the plum brandy took hold, but after the morning's aches had eased. 70 years had bent her spine but sharpened her memory, made her a living archive of local history and gossip. "I wondered when you'd come," she said before he'd even knocked, opening the door with a knowing smile that revealed surprisingly good teeth. "The forest keeper who doesn't believe in ghosts, seeking answers from an old woman who does." Her single room smelled of herbs and smoke, bundles of dried plants hanging from every beam. She gestured him to a stool while she continued grinding something in a mortar. Willow bark by the scent for pain. "You want to know about the soldier spirits," she said, not a question. "I want to know about 1848, he corrected. "What really happened here, not what Father Miklos preaches." Maria cackled, a sound like wind through dry leaves. "That Hungarian priest knows nothing. His family came here in the 60s when the railroad brought new people. But my family," she tapped her temple with one gnarled finger, "we remember." She poured tea from a blackened pot, the liquid bitter with herbs he couldn't identify. "There was no battle here in 48. The Hungarians never came this far west. But," she paused, eyes growing distant, "there were deserters, Austrian soldiers who fled the fighting, hid in these mountains. The old count, the current one's father, he hunted them like animals. Paid good money for information, better money for bodies." The gamekeeper leaned forward, interested now. "How many?" "Who can say? 5, 10, maybe more. They lived wild for months, stealing food, poaching game. Then winter came, and winter in the Carpathians forgives nothing." She sipped her tea thoughtfully. "They found 3 bodies in spring, frozen solid. The rest vanished. died in the forest or escaped over the passes. But the old count claimed bounty on 8 men, 8 death certificates filed in Lemberg. You're saying he claimed money for deaths that didn't happen? I'm saying nothing. I'm an old woman who talks too much. But her eyes glittered with meaning. Though it's interesting, isn't it, that the ghost appears near the old boundary stones, right where the deserters supposedly made their last camp. Walking back through the village, the gamekeeper nearly collided with Janos, who was directing the unloading of supplies at the sawmill. His friend pulled him aside, voice urgent. The tools missing from storage. I've made a count. 2 saws, 3 axes, rope, pulleys. Enough to set up a logging operation, if someone was so inclined. When did they go missing? Hard to say exactly. Could have been over months. We don't inventory until year's end, usually. Janos glanced around nervously. There's more. Some of the men, they're saying the ghost has been seen in daylight now, moving through the trees, watching them work. The gamekeeper filed this information alongside Maria's history lesson, pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together yet. At the estate, he found Pavel in the equipment shed, studying the captured rope and lantern with intense concentration. "Military knots," the boy announced proudly. "My uncle served in the cavalry, showed me all the different types. This is definitely army technique." He demonstrated how the rope had been rigged. Whoever did this had training. That afternoon brought an unexpected summons from the Count. In his study, the nobleman wasn't alone. A man in the black coat of imperial bureaucracy sat stiffly in the leather chair, radiating official displeasure. The district inspector from Lemberg, 45 and pallid as paper, regarded the gamekeeper with the suspicious eyes of urban authority confronting rural competence. "Inspector Richter is concerned about these disturbances," the Count explained, his tone carefully neutral. "The railway consortium has complained to the provincial government. They want assurances that timber shipments won't be delayed." "Superstitious peasants seeing shadows," the inspector said dismissively. "In Vienna, we've moved beyond such medieval nonsense. I trust you can handle this quickly and quietly." The gamekeeper recognized the type, a man who'd never spent a night outdoors, who believed civilization ended at the city gates. "I'm investigating, sir." "Investigating?" Richter's eyebrows rose. "What is there to investigate? Tell the peasants there are no ghosts. Fine anyone who refuses to work and be done with it." "With respect, sir, someone is creating these apparitions deliberately. There's evidence of—" "Evidence?" The inspector laughed unpleasantly. "Next you'll be telling me you need to interrogate the spirits themselves. Count, surely your man understands that his job is to manage the forest, not play detective." The Count's jaw tightened slightly, the only sign of his irritation. "My gamekeeper has my complete confidence, Inspector. If he says there's something to investigate, then there is." After the inspector left, muttering about provincial incompetence, the Count poured 2 glasses of brandy, a rare gesture of equality. "Richter's a fool, but he has connections. Solve this quickly, before he decides to bring in the gendarmerie. They have all the subtlety of artillery." Walking home through the dying light, the gamekeeper noticed Anna waiting by his lodge, shawl pulled tight against the evening chill. She held something wrapped in cloth. "From the tavern's lost property," she said, unwrapping an old military haversack. "Found it last month, but looking at it today, I noticed something." Inside, among the usual detritus, was a letter, water-stained but readable. Addressed to Stefan Korchak, formerly Sergeant, 14th Infantry Regiment. Dated 1881. a pension denial from the Imperial War Ministry. The gamekeeper chose a moonless night for his expedition, clouds thick as wool blocking even starlight. Pavel waited at the lodge, lamp turned low, his young face a study in conflicting emotions, eagerness warring with ancestral fear of the dark forest. The boy had traded his usual worn jacket for something darker, understanding without being told that tonight they would become shadows themselves. "Keep your breathing steady," the gamekeeper instructed, checking Pavel's equipment one final time. "Fear makes you breathe fast, and fast breathing makes noise. The forest listens to everything." He'd given the boy a small bullseye lantern with a sliding shutter, military surplus from the Count's stores. "Use this only if we separate. Otherwise, trust your feet to find the path." They entered the forest at 10 o'clock, later than the ghost usually appeared, but early enough to catch anyone setting up their deception. The gamekeeper led them along a deer trail that paralleled the marked trees, moving with deliberate patience. Every few steps he paused, listening to the forest's nighttime symphony, the rustle of nocturnal creatures, the creak of cooling wood, the distant call of an eagle owl. Pavel mimicked his movements, learning through observation the difference between stealth and mere quietness. Near the old boundary stones, they took position behind a fallen oak, its massive trunk providing perfect concealment. The gamekeeper had chosen this spot 3 nights ago, noting the sightlines, the wind direction, the escape routes. Now they waited, bodies cooling in the autumn air, senses sharpening as eyes adjusted to darkness. 11 o'clock passed, then half past. Pavel shifted slightly, probably fighting cramps, but stayed silent. Good boy, the gamekeeper thought, learning patience, the hunter's hardest lesson. Just as midnight approached, a sound reached them. Metal against wood. Faint, but distinct. Someone was working in the darkness, perhaps 50 meters to their north. Then, sudden as lightning, the light appeared, but not where expected. This time it rose from behind a cluster of pines, swaying more dramatically than before, casting wild shadows that danced like dervishes. Pavel's hand found the gamekeeper's arm, gripped tight. The light moved differently tonight, erratic, almost panicked, as if the ghost itself was disturbed. The gamekeeper studied the movement pattern, his mind calculating angles and distances. There, he saw it now. Not one rope, but 2, creating a more complex path for the lantern. Someone had refined their technique, made it more convincing. The light suddenly dropped, rose again, spun in a circle that would seem impossible for any natural movement. "Stay here," he breathed to Pavel, then began circling through the forest, using the light's wild movements to mask any sound he might make. He wanted to find the operator, the person pulling the strings of this supernatural puppet show. 20 meters from the light's origin point, he froze. Voices, low and urgent, at least 2 men arguing in hushed tones. He crept closer, using a thick pine for cover. "Told you it's too risky now," one voice said, accented German, Ruthenian maybe. "That gamekeeper's been sniffing around." "3 more nights," another replied, harder, commanding. "3 more nights, and we'll have everything moved. Then let them search all they want." The gamekeeper tried to edge closer, but his foot found a dry branch. The crack seemed loud as thunder. The voices stopped immediately. The light went out. Then crashing through the undergrowth, someone running. No, 2 someones, splitting in different directions. He had a choice, pursue or investigate. Training won over instinct. He moved to where the voices had been, lighting a match quickly. More rope, more pulleys, but also something else. Fresh axe marks on several trees, marked for cutting, but not by any system the estate used. Someone was selecting specific trees, marking their own timber for harvest. Pavel appeared beside him, breathless. "I saw one of them, running toward the village, tall, moved like a soldier." Stefan Korchak, the gamekeeper thought, but didn't say. The pension denial letter Anna had found was beginning to make sense. A trained soldier denied his rightful pension using military skills for different purposes. But timber theft seemed too simple, too obvious. They spent another hour searching the area by careful matchlight, finding more evidence: cigarette ends of a type not sold in the village, boot prints from military-style footwear, and most interesting, a small notebook dropped in the flight. Water-damaged and mostly illegible, but a few pages showed numbers, calculations, what looked like a tally of some kind. On the walk back, Pavel was unusually quiet. Finally, near the lodge, he spoke. "That wasn't any ghost, was it, sir?" "No, Pavel. Very much flesh and blood." "Then why make it seem supernatural? Why not just steal what they're stealing?" The gamekeeper considered how to answer. "Sometimes the best hiding place is behind fear. Make people afraid to look, and they won't see what's right in front of them." As they reached the lodge, a surprise awaited. Anna, wrapped in her father's old military greatcoat, holding a covered pot. "Thought you might need something warm when you returned," she said simply. Her eyes took in their forest-stained clothes, the evidence bundle Pavel carried. "You found something?" Over thick soup and black bread, the gamekeeper found himself telling her about the night's discoveries. She listened without interrupting, her dark eyes thoughtful. When he finished, she said, "My father remembers Korchak. Came through the village 2 years ago looking for work. No one would hire him. Something about trouble at his last position. He left after a week, but he was asking questions about the old count, about 1848, about records in the estate archives. Father thought he was one of those radical journalists trying to dig up old scandals." The gamekeeper felt pieces clicking together in his mind. Not simple theft, but something more complex. Tomorrow he would need to visit the Count's archives himself, see what Korchak might have been seeking. But tonight, with Pavel drowsing by the fire and Anna's presence warming the room more than any flame, he allowed himself a moment of simple, human comfort. Dawn brought revelation with the morning mist. The gamekeeper stood at the edge of a ravine he'd explored countless times, but now saw with new eyes. Those ropes and pulleys weren't just for moving lights. They were for moving weight across difficult terrain. The engineering was impressive, almost beautiful in its functionality. Whoever designed this understood physics, leverage, mechanical advantage. He traced the system through the forest, Pavel following with growing amazement. The ropes ran between trees in a complex network, using natural anchors and hidden pulleys to create an aerial pathway. At certain points, platforms had been constructed in the branches, camouflaged with pine boughs, invisible from below unless you knew exactly where to look. "It's like those timber slides they use in the high mountains," Pavel observed, "but through the air instead of along the ground." Precisely, but this system wasn't for moving timber, at least not primarily. The gamekeeper found the first cache hidden beneath a false forest floor of branches and leaves. Dressed deer carcasses, wild boar, even a young red stag that should have been protected under the Count's hunting laws. Poached game, but preserved with salt and smoke, ready for transport. The second cache held timber, but not just any wood. Carefully selected hardwoods, the type furniture makers in Vienna paid premium prices for. Each log bore marks indicating age, grain quality, characteristics that only an expert would recognize. Someone with knowledge was selecting these trees with the discrimination of a wine merchant choosing vintages. By noon, they'd mapped most of the network. It stretched nearly a kilometer through the forest, connecting hidden caches to a central collection point near an old logging road. The ghost light had been mere misdirection, keeping curious eyes away from this elaborate operation. The gamekeeper had to admit a grudging admiration for the planning involved. "Sir," Pavel called from a thicket of young birch, "there's something here you should see." Hidden beneath a waterproof canvas was a military field desk, the kind regiment clerks used. Inside, papers that made the gamekeeper's breath catch. Not just tallies of poached game and stolen timber, but documents. Old documents. Death certificates from 1848 bearing the seal of the provincial government. Pay vouchers for bounties on deserters, all signed by the old count, all claiming payments for 8 dead soldiers. But attached to these official papers were others. Testimonies from village elders, dated just last year, swearing they remembered only 3 bodies being found. A letter from a priest in Galicia, confirming that 2 of the supposedly dead deserters had lived in his parish until the 1870s. Evidence that the old count had defrauded the imperial government of significant sums. The gamekeeper understood now. This wasn't simple theft, but something more complex. Korczak was gathering evidence while simultaneously funding his investigation through poaching and timber theft. The military precision, the elaborate deception, the careful documentation. It all spoke of a man on a mission that went beyond mere profit. They were photographing the documents with the Count's camera, a delicate procedure Pavel had learned from the estate's secretary. When footsteps approached through the underbrush, both men tensed, the gamekeeper's hand moving to his rifle. But it was Anna who emerged, breathless and urgent. "You need to leave, now!" Her usual composure had cracked, revealing genuine fear. "There are strangers at the tavern asking about you. 3 men, maybe 4. They look like soldiers but claim to be timber merchants." The gamekeeper quickly gathered the most important documents while Pavel packed the camera. "Did they mention names?" "They asked for Korczak specifically. When Father said he didn't know him, they described him perfectly. Then they asked about the estate's gamekeeper, whether you'd been investigating anything unusual." As they moved quickly through the forest, taking a circuitous route back to the lodge, the gamekeeper's mind raced. If Korczak had associates, this operation was larger than he'd imagined. Military deserters often maintained networks, helped each other survive outside the law. But these men, coming now, asking questions openly, something had changed. Perhaps their schedule had been disrupted by his investigations. At the lodge, he made a quick decision. "Pavel, take these documents to the Count. Use the servants' entrance. Don't let anyone see you. Tell him I need an hour of his time, privately, tonight, after dinner." "What about you, sir?" "I'm going to have a conversation with our ghost." He loaded his rifle, checked his ammunition. "Anna, your brother from Vienna, he's still visiting?" She nodded, understanding immediately. He leaves tomorrow on the morning coach. He could carry a letter if needed." "Good. If I'm not back by sunset, give him this." He quickly wrote a note to the provincial police commander in Lemberg, outlining what he'd discovered. "Tell him to deliver it personally, no one else." Anna's hand briefly touched his. "Be careful. These men, whoever they are, they've invested too much to give up easily." The gamekeeper moved through the forest toward the collection point, every sense alert. The afternoon sun slanted through the trees, creating pools of light and shadow that could hide anything, or anyone. Near the old logging road, he found what he expected: fresh wheel ruts from a heavy wagon, boot prints from multiple men, signs of hurried activity. They were moving out, evacuating their stolen goods while they could. But haste made them careless. Following the wagon tracks, he soon heard voices, the creak of wheels, the snort of horses. 4 men, as Anna had said, loading the last of the caches onto a covered wagon. And supervising them, matching the description from the pension denial letter, Stefan Korczak himself. Stefan Korczak moved like a man who'd never lost his military bearing, spine straight, eyes constantly scanning, each gesture economical and purposeful. 40 years old, the gamekeeper estimated, with the kind of hardness that came from surviving where others hadn't. His 3 companions showed similar discipline, loading the wagon with practiced efficiency, no wasted motion or unnecessary talk. The gamekeeper watched from a concealed position above the road, calculating odds. 4 trained men against 1. Poor arithmetic, even with surprise on his side. But he wasn't here to fight. He needed information. Needed to understand the full scope of what Korczak had uncovered about the old Count's fraud. The wagon was nearly loaded when Korczak suddenly raised his hand, silencing his men. He stood perfectly still, head cocked, listening. The gamekeeper held his breath, finger resting on the trigger guard of his rifle. After a long moment, Korczak spoke in clear German, his voice carrying through the forest. "I know you're there, gamekeeper. Been tracking you for the last 20 minutes. You move well for a civilian, but you still breathe like one." A pause. "Come out. We need to talk, and I'd rather not shoot you." The gamekeeper considered his options, then stepped into view, rifle lowered but ready. Korczak's men reached for weapons, but their leader waved them back. "Just talk," he said, "man to man." Up close, Korczak's face showed the map of hard years, scars from old battles, lines etched by disappointment, eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. "You found my archives," he said. It wasn't a question. "I found evidence of multiple crimes, poaching, theft, fraud." "Fraud!" Korczak laughed bitterly. "Yes, let's talk about fraud. 8 death certificates for 3 actual bodies, 5,000 gulden in bounties for men who never died here. Your precious Count's father built his railway fortune on lies and blood money." The gamekeeper kept his expression neutral. "That was 40 years ago. The son isn't responsible for the father's sins, isn't he? When he inherits the wealth those sins created? When men like me, who served the empire faithfully, are denied pensions, while these noble thieves live in luxury?" Korczak's control slipped briefly, revealing depths of anger. 16 years I served. Bosnia, the occupation. Lost 2 fingers and my hearing in 1 ear to a Serb grenade. And what did I get? A denial letter. Insufficient documentation of service. Meanwhile, the Count's father claimed money for ghosts. One of Korczak's men shifted nervously. "Stefan, we need to go. If he found us, others might." "In a moment, Andras." Korczak studied the gamekeeper. You're not what I expected. Most estate servants would have run to their master immediately, but you investigated first. Why? I prefer truth to assumptions. Truth, Korchak smiled without humor. Here's truth for you. That game we poached? It goes to feed families of other denied soldiers in Lemberg. The timber? Sold to fund legal challenges to pension denials. We're not common thieves. We're trying to build something from nothing. Create our own justice since the Empire won't provide it. The gamekeeper heard the conviction in his voice, the belief that transformed crime into crusade. And the ghost lights, the fear you spread through the village. Necessary theater. We needed time, privacy. No one was hurt. People were terrified. Work stopped, livelihoods threatened. Temporary inconvenience against permanent injustice. Korchak pulled out a leather portfolio from the wagon. Here, everything I've collected about the old Count's fraud. Copies of documents, witness testimonies, proof that would stand in any honest court. Take it to your master.
Tell him Stefan Korchak knows what his father did. The gamekeeper accepted the portfolio, feeling its weight. You're giving this to me? I'm trading it. We leave peacefully, you let us go. The Count keeps his family's secret, we disappear. Everyone wins. The poached game, the stolen timber, already sold, money distributed. Can't give back what's already gone to feed hungry children. Korchak's men had finished loading, stood ready by the wagon. I'm not an evil man, gamekeeper, just a desperate one. There's a difference, though I admit it's getting harder to see. The gamekeeper made his decision. Take the north road. The gendarmerie patrol the eastern route on Thursdays. You have perhaps 3 hours before anyone notices you've gone. Korchak nodded, understanding the gift he'd been given. You're a good man. Don't let that kill you. He climbed onto the wagon, then paused. The current Count. Is he like his father? No, he's complicated. But not cruel. Then maybe there's hope for something better. Korchak signaled his men, and the wagon lurched into motion. Tell the villagers their ghost is laid to rest. Tell them, he seemed to search for words, tell them sometimes the living need justice more than the dead need remembrance. The gamekeeper watched until the wagon disappeared around a bend, then began his walk back through the forest. The portfolio weighed heavy in his hands, its contents capable of destroying a family's reputation, or perhaps beginning a different kind of reckoning. At the estate, he found the Count in his study, brandy already poured, as if he'd been expecting this moment. Pavel had delivered the initial documents, and the nobleman's face showed he understood the implications. So, the Count said quietly, my father's sins come home at last. The Count studied the documents spread across his desk like a cartographer examining maps of hostile territory. His fingers traced the old signatures, the official seals, the damning testimonies. The gamekeeper stood quietly, watching how nobility processed shame, with stillness rather than action, silence rather than excuse. My father was a hard man, the Count finally said. I knew that. But this, he gestured at the papers, this is theft wearing the mask of patriotism. He poured another brandy, offered one to the gamekeeper, second time in a week, practically a revolution in social protocol. Where is Korchak now? Gone, Your Excellency, with his men and their harvest. You let them go. Not an accusation, merely observation. I made a judgment. Right or wrong, it's done. The Count laughed, short and bitter.
A gamekeeper making decisions about justice. My grandfather would have had you flogged. My father would have dismissed you. And he took a long drink. I'm relieved someone else chose for me. Through the window, sunset painted the mountains crimson.
The Count seemed to age before the gamekeeper's eyes, shoulders bearing weight that had nothing to do with years. What would you have me do? Publish these documents? Destroy my family's name? Bankrupt the estate, paying restitution for crimes 4 decades old? I wouldn't presume to advise Your Excellency on such matters.
No, but you've thought about it. You're a man who thinks before he acts. It's why you're still my gamekeeper after 20 years. The Count turned from the window. Tell me what you think, not as servant to master, but as one man to another. The gamekeeper chose his words carefully. Korchak mentioned other soldiers with denied pensions, men who served honorably but can't navigate the bureaucracy, can't prove what shouldn't need proving. Perhaps there's a way to balance old wrongs with new rights. Understanding dawned in the Count's eyes. A fund, anonymous, private.
For veterans whose claims have been denied. He began calculating, the businessman emerging from the aristocrat. It could be done through the church or a Vienna bank. No connection to the estate, no admission of anything. The amount would need to be significant. Korchak's documents suggest your father claimed 5,000 gulden in false bounties.
Plus 40 years of interest, the Count smiled grimly. My father would rage from his grave, which I'm discovering might not be entirely unwelcome. He gathered the documents, locked them in his private safe. I'll need time to arrange this properly, discreetly. Can I trust you to keep this matter between us? As always, Your Excellency. The next morning brought Inspector Richter back from Lemberg, accompanied by 2 gendarmes in their distinctive uniforms. They found the gamekeeper at the lodge, cleaning his rifle with methodical patience. Richter's pale face was flushed with official indignation.
I'm told the criminals have escaped. After all this disruption, you let them simply vanish?
I found no criminals, Inspector. Only evidence of an elaborate prank, already dismantled. The gamekeeper continued cleaning his weapon, not looking up. Some rope, pulleys, a lantern. Probably local boys with too much time and brandy. Prank? The district governor received reports of organized poaching, timber theft. Rumors, Inspector. Forest gossip. You know how these mountain people exaggerate. He finally looked up, meeting Richter's eyes steadily. I've been gamekeeper here for 20 years. If there was significant poaching, I'd know. Richter turned to the gendarmes. Search the forest, find evidence, question the villagers. They spent 2 days finding nothing. Korchak had been thorough in his withdrawal, removing all traces of the operation. The villagers, with the unified amnesia that small communities perfect over generations, knew nothing about ghost lights or strange activities. Even Father Miklos, when questioned, simply sermonized about the importance of letting the dead rest peacefully. Janos proved particularly unhelpful, his Ruthenian accent growing thicker with each question until the German-speaking gendarmes gave up in frustration. Pavel developed a convenient illness that kept him bedridden whenever officials approached. Anna's tavern served the investigators watered wine and her father's worst cooking, ensuring their stay was as unpleasant as possible. On the second evening, the gamekeeper found the Count walking in his garden, studying the bare rose bushes with unusual interest. "Richter's leaving tomorrow," the Count said without preamble. "Furious but empty-handed.
He's threatened to file a report about provincial incompetence. That's his privilege, Your Excellency."
"Indeed." The Count pulled out a letter. "This came from Vienna today. A private bank, one I've never heard of, has established a veterans relief fund. Anonymous donor. 50,000 gulden initial endowment." He watched the gamekeeper's face. "Curious timing. Very generous, whoever it is. Yes, though I wonder if the donor sleeps better now." The Count pocketed the letter. "By the way, I'm promoting Pavel to junior forester. He's shown excellent judgment recently. And I'm increasing your own salary. A man who can handle delicate matters deserves proper compensation." That evening, the gamekeeper sat with Anna in the tavern after closing time. She'd heard about Richter's departure, about the Ghostlight's mysterious disappearance, about everything the village pretended not to know. "You did something good," she said simply. "Something complicated and dangerous, but good. I did what seemed necessary, nothing more," she smiled. That particular expression, women perfect when they understand more than men realize. "My brother's offer still stands. His business in Vienna needs investors. We could leave this place, start fresh in the city." The gamekeeper considered her words, her face, the promise of a different life. Through the window he could see the forest edge, dark against the stars. November arrived with unexpected warmth, what the old-timers called St. Martin's summer, those precious days when autumn briefly pretends to be spring. The gamekeeper used this reprieve to walk his territory, checking the boundaries that Korczak's operation had disturbed. Everything needed to be perfect before the Inspector General's annual review. The Count had made that clear without actually saying it. At the northern boundary, he found János directing the timber marking for winter cutting.
The work had resumed once the ghost lights vanished, though the men still crossed themselves when passing certain trees. Human memory was convenient that way, editing fear into superstition, then superstition into story.
"Found something odd," János mentioned, pulling out a sealed envelope from his jacket. "Hidden in the hollow oak near the old camp. Addressed to you." The gamekeeper recognized Korczak's precise handwriting immediately. Inside, a brief note. "For the one who chose mercy over law, check the third pine from the eastern corner, 40 paces north. A gift for your discretion." No signature, but none needed. He found it that afternoon. A small leather journal wrapped in oilcloth, buried shallow beneath moss and leaves. Not documents this time, but names. Lists of veterans in Lemberg, Prague, even Vienna. Men denied pensions, their families, their circumstances. Korczak's real archive, the one that mattered. Each entry included details that bureaucrats would never record. Children's ages, wives' illnesses, specific needs that money might address. That evening brought unexpected theater to the village. The Count himself appeared at the tavern, something that hadn't happened in living memory. He entered quietly, ordered beer like any common man, though everyone pretended not to stare. He'd brought his secretary, who began taking names and statements about agricultural improvements and worker welfare, transparent excuse for what was really happening. "Any man who served the Empire," the Count announced, "or his widow, or his children, can apply for assistance from a new fund established through the Provincial Agricultural Society." He never mentioned his father, never acknowledged any debt, but everyone understood. Mountain people knew how to read silence as well as words. The gamekeeper watched from his corner table as men gradually approached the secretary.
Old Ferenc, who'd lost his arm at Königgrätz, the widow Halas, whose husband died in Bosnia without proper documentation, even some who'd never served but had suffered from the same bureaucratic indifference. The Count approved every application without question. Anna brought him fresh beer, leaning close to whisper, "My brother left this morning, without me." She smiled at his surprise. "I told him Vienna could wait. Some things need tending here first." "Your father won't be pleased. It was a good opportunity." "Father's opinion stopped mattering when I buried my husband. Besides," she glanced at the Count, still holding court, "interesting times are coming to these mountains. I'd hate to miss them." Later, as the Count prepared to leave, he stopped at the gamekeeper's table. "Walk with me," he commanded, though his tone made it a request. They stood outside under stars, sharp as winter ice, breath misting in the cooling air. "I've been thinking about justice," the Count said. "My father believed in the old ways. Take what you can, hold what you've taken, pass it on enlarged. Simple rules for simple times." He paused, choosing words carefully. "But the world's changing. Railways, telegraphs, newspapers that spread every scandal. The old ways don't work anymore. Change comes whether we welcome it or not, Your Excellency." "Yes, but we can choose how to meet it." The Count pulled out a document. "I'm establishing a proper pension fund, officially through the estate. Any veteran living on my lands will receive support. It won't undo the past, but perhaps it can reshape the future." The gamekeeper recognized the courage this required, a nobleman admitting, however obliquely, to family shame. "Korczak would approve." "Korczak," the Count smiled faintly. "A strange ghost indeed. One that haunted us with truth rather than fear." He extended his hand, unprecedented gesture from noble to servant. "Thank you for your discretion, your judgment, your creative interpretation of justice." The handshake was brief but firm, a contract between men rather than classes. After the Count left, the gamekeeper remained outside, listening to the forest's night sounds. Somewhere an owl called, hunting in darkness. Life continuing its ancient patterns, indifferent to human drama. Pavel emerged from the tavern, slightly drunk on beer and pride. The Count had publicly praised his work during the ghost investigation. "Sir, can I ask you something? When you caught Korczak, why didn't you arrest him? He was a thief, whatever else he claimed." The gamekeeper considered his answer. "Have you ever seen a wolf with its leg in a trap? It will chew through its own bone to escape, not because it's evil, but because survival makes its own morality. Korczak was trapped by circumstances he didn't create." Sometimes, the real crime is the trap, not what creatures do to escape it. Pavel nodded as if he understood, though the gamekeeper suspected true understanding would come only with years and experience. The young forester headed home, weaving slightly, leaving the gamekeeper alone with his thoughts. Through the tavern window he could see Anna cleaning tables, lamplight catching copper highlights in her dark hair. She looked up, caught him watching, smiled. Tomorrow he would help her with winter preparations for the tavern. Next week she would help him reorganize the lodge. Small steps towards something neither quite dared name yet. December brought the first real snow, transforming the Carpathians into something from a folk tale, pristine, silent, deceptively peaceful.
The gamekeeper stood at his usual morning post, watching dawn paint the mountains rose and gold, coffee steaming in his hands.
6 weeks had passed since the ghost lights vanished, and the forest had settled back into its ancient rhythms, as if the whole affair had been nothing more than autumn's fever dream. But changes, subtle as snow accumulation, had transformed the estate and village. The new pension fund operated from a small office next to the church, Father Miklos having overcome his Hungarian pride to administer what everyone called the Count's conscience. Already, 17 families received regular payments. Old Ferenc had been able to buy medicine for his rheumatism. The widow Halash had repaired her roof before winter's worst arrived. Pavel had grown into his role as junior forester with surprising maturity, the ghost investigation having burned away his provincial superstitions. This morning, he arrived with the weekly report, moving through the snow with the confidence of someone who'd found his place in the world. "No new poaching signs, sir. The deer are keeping to the southern slopes where the browse is still accessible. And," he grinned, "Anna asked me to tell you she's making goulash tonight. The kind with extra paprika, the way you like it." The gamekeeper nodded, maintaining his dignity despite Pavel's knowing smile. His evening visits to the tavern had become regular enough that no one commented anymore, though everyone noticed. In a village this small, courtship was a spectator sport, observed with the same interest as the changing seasons. Walking his rounds, he found himself at the old boundary stones where everything had started. The trees still bore faint marks from Korchak's pulleys, scars that would fade but never completely disappear. Like all wounds, he thought, they became part of the landscape, reminders that healing didn't mean forgetting. A letter had arrived the previous week, postmarked from Trieste, no return address. Inside, just a newspaper clipping about a new import-export company specializing in helping veterans establish businesses. The company's mysterious benefactor remained anonymous, but the gamekeeper recognized Korchak's hand in the careful organization, the attention to those society overlooked. The man had found his own way to balance scales that others pretended weren't tilted. Near noon, unexpected visitors arrived at the lodge. Count von Steinberg, accompanied by a man the gamekeeper didn't recognize, elderly, wearing the kind of expensive simplicity that suggested old money and new ideas. "This is Baron Rothenberg," the Count explained, "from the Imperial Reform Commission in Vienna. He's heard about our local initiatives." The Baron studied the gamekeeper with intelligent eyes. "His Excellency tells me you were instrumental in resolving recent difficulties." Discreetly, efficiently, and with what he calls creative justice. These are qualities the Empire needs as we modernize. They talked for an hour, the Baron asking precise questions about forest management, local disputes, the delicate balance between law and custom. Finally, he made his offer. "There's a position opening in the new Imperial Forestry Service, Regional Inspector for the Northeastern Carpathians. The salary is considerable, the authority substantial. A man of your experience would be invaluable." The gamekeeper felt the weight of the opportunity. Escape from servitude, real power to implement change, respect that transcended birth, everything a man of his station might dream of achieving. "I'd need time to consider such a change. Naturally, the position doesn't begin until spring." The Baron stood to leave, then paused. "Oh, I should mention, the post includes housing suitable for a family."
in case that factors into your decision. After they left, the gamekeeper sat alone, contemplating futures that had suddenly multiplied like forest paths after a storm. He could leave, take Anna to a provincial capital, build something entirely new, or stay, tend this corner of the world he'd come to love despite its harsh edges and hidden sins. That evening the tavern was warm with the kind of contentment that comes when survival is no longer a daily question. Men who'd received pension payments bought rounds for friends. János told exaggerated stories about the ghost hunt that grew more elaborate with each telling. Father Miklos, slightly drunk on plum brandy, sermonized about divine justice working in mysterious ways. Anna sat beside him after the crowd thinned, her presence comfortable as worn leather. Pavel told me about the Baron's visit. Vienna would be an adventure. It would. He watched her face, trying to read what she wasn't saying. But adventures end. Then you need a home to return to. And where is home for a man who spent 20 years in another family's forest? He considered the question, looking around the tavern, at János laughing with his crew, Pavel attempting to court the miller's daughter, Father Miklos dozing by the fire. Through the window, moonlight silvered the snow-covered mountains, the forest sleeping under winter's blanket. Somewhere out there wolves hunted, deer huddled for warmth, and the eternal dance of predator and prey continued unchanged since the world began. Home, he said finally, is where your ghosts are at peace. Anna smiled, understanding flowing between them like spring water, clear, essential, patient. Then perhaps the ghosts have been laid to rest properly this time. All of them. Snow began falling again as they walked to the lodge, thick flakes that would cover all tracks by morning, making the world new and unmarked. The gamekeeper thought about Korczak somewhere in Trieste, building his own version of justice. About the Count, learning to carry his father's sins without being crushed by them. About Pavel, growing into the man his potential promised. About himself, standing at the crossroads between duty and desire, past and future. Inside the lodge, Anna made tea while he built up the fire. They sat together watching flames dance, not needing words to fill the comfortable silence. Outside, the forest dreamed its winter dreams, and the mountains stood eternal guard over the small human dramas played out in their shadows. Come spring, he would give the Baron his answer. But tonight, with snow erasing the world's hard edges and Anna's hand warm in his, the future could wait. Some mysteries, he'd learned, weren't meant to be solved, but simply lived through, one careful step at a time. Like tracking deer through unmarked snow, following instincts older and truer than any map. The wandering lights were gone, but what they'd illuminated remained. The possibility of justice tempered by mercy, the hope that even the deepest wrongs might find some measure of healing, and the quiet understanding that sometimes the real ghosts we need to face are not the dead, but the living, ourselves most of all.